I was born in Guma local government area of Benue State, Nigeria, a land rich with yam, maize, kindness, and pain. My people are Tiv. Our identity is tied to our farms, our compounds, our community. We are a people who live off the soil and die for it. Growing up, I never thought I'd see death walk into my home and leave nothing behind. But it happened. And I lived to tell the story. It was the 10th of January 2018. I remember the date because it was just days after New Year celebrations. My uncle Duga had killed a fat goat for us all, and my mother had made her famous pounded yam with egusi soup. The compound was full. Cousins from Makurdi, Otukpo, and Boko had returned to the village to celebrate. We laughed deep, danced under moonlight, and sang Tiv folk songs until the stars went to sleep. My father, Pa Ivran, stood by the fire that night and said something I'll never forget. We may not have much, but we have each other. And that is wealth greater than gold. How ironic. Because 3 nights later, that wealth was stolen. It began with rumors, whispers that Fulani herdsmen had moved into the neighboring village of Tomatar. They had passed through Bagwan with their cattle, trampling farms and threatening anyone who dared complain. But these whispers weren't new. We had lived with them for decades. Sometimes in peace, other times in tension. But never like this. That Tuesday night, we had just finished eating. I was outside with my cousin Ayandofa, fetching water from the clay pot when we heard the first gunshot. We froze. Was that a hunter? He asked, gripping my hand. Then came the second shot. And a third. Screams followed. Not just one. Many. Shattering, unfiltered, heart-wrenching. Then someone from the far end of the compound yelled. They are here. Run. I didn't run immediately. I turned back toward the house. My younger siblings Sesuk, age 6, and Mesev, age 3 were still inside. I sprinted back. As I reached the doorway, my father ran out holding a cutlass, shouting, "Take your siblings and hide in the cassava trench." I grabbed them. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would tear through my chest. I didn't even have shoes on. We ran into the bush behind the house. The cassava trench had been dug for farming, but that night, it became our hiding place. From that trench, I watched my home, my everything turn into fire and blood. They came with guns, machetes, torches. They moved like demons, shouting in a language I couldn't understand. They didn't speak, they screamed. They didn't shoot once, they shot until bodies dropped. I saw my mother run out of the house holding baby Nina. A bullet caught her leg. She fell. They rushed to her like hungry dogs. I covered my siblings' eyes. I didn't want them to see what I saw. I didn't want them to know our mother didn't die quickly. One of the men, a small-built Fulani herdsman with a crooked nose, stood over Uncle Duga. Uncle had tried to fight them with his old Dane gun. He shot once and missed. They didn't miss. They hacked him in front of his son. By dawn, everything was quiet. Not peaceful quiet like a grave. Smoke curled from the thatched roof of my father's hut. The livestock pen was empty. The yam barn was in flames. And our people were silent in death. We crept out of the trench slowly. I carried Mesev on my back. Sesuk held my hand tightly, eyes wide and dry. We walked barefoot through what used to be our home. My father was dead. My mother. Uncle. Auntie Turna. Cousin Tursu and his wife. Little Dusur who had just turned 5. My grandfather, who couldn't run. My grandmother, who wouldn't leave without him. 20 family members in total. Their bodies lay in the red earth of the compound. Some still clutched cutlasses. Others, only prayers. I didn't cry. Not then. Because I couldn't understand it yet. I thought maybe it was a nightmare, and someone would shake me awake. But it wasn't. It was real. It was evil. And it was just the beginning. Benue is called the food basket of the nation. But that night, it was a basket of corpses. The government came days later with cameras, statements, and empty promises. They called it a clash. But I was there. I saw it. It wasn't a clash. It was a massacre. We buried the dead in shallow graves not because we wanted to, but because there was no time, no strength, no help. My grandfather, my mother, my uncles, my cousins, 20 members of my family laid to rest in one broken morning. I didn't cry until we reached the IDP camp in Makurdi. When we arrived, the camp was already full. They gave us a torn tarpaulin to make a tent. No mattresses. No mats. Just the red dust and the thin hope that we would not be attacked again. I slept on the floor with Mesev curled on my chest and Sesuk beside me. Every night, I stayed awake, afraid that the gunshots would return, that it was all a trick, and they were just waiting to finish us off. The air in the camp smelt of smoke, sweat, and despair. People were broken. Not just physically, their spirits had been ripped apart. A woman next to our tent screamed at night. Her husband and 3 children were killed before her eyes. She would wail, calling their names in her sleep, until others had to restrain her. A boy named Turkuma, who had escaped with only a bleeding leg and the shirt on his back, spoke to no one. He sat under a tree all day, staring into nothingness. One day, he carved a drawing of his family into the sand. The next day, rain came and washed it away. He never drew again. I stopped speaking for days. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't know how to say the things I had seen. How do you describe watching your mother fall with your baby sister strapped to her back? How do you explain the silence that follows a massacre, that thick, heavy silence that presses on your chest like a stone? Even when food was brought to the camp, bowls of watery rice or yellow gari, I could barely eat. My stomach felt full with sorrow. And yet, somehow, I had to keep going. For Mesev. For Sesuk. For the dead. One afternoon, a volunteer NGO worker came to our tent. Her name was Auntie Halima. She was kind, gentle, and most importantly, she listened. She didn't ask me what happened. She just sat beside me and said, "You don't have to talk. But if you ever want to write, here's a book." It was a plain brown notebook with a pen tucked into the spine. That night, after everyone slept, I opened it and wrote 4 words. "I don't feel safe." That was the first thing I had said in days. From there, the words began to flow, not like a river, but like a drip from a leaking roof. Slow. Painful. Relieving. I wrote every day. I wrote about the yams in our farm. About my mother's laughter. About the way Uncle Duga used to whistle when walking to the stream. About the trench that saved our lives. About the bodies. About the fire. About the blood. Writing didn't erase the memories, but it gave them shape. It gave me shape. A few weeks later, we started makeshift classes in the camp under a mango tree. One day, our volunteer teacher, Mr. Oko, said, "Everyone will write a story for World Refugee Day." The others groaned. I panicked. A story? About what? Who would care? But something in me whispered, "Tell it." I submitted a short piece titled, the day my world burned. It was just 2 pages, handwritten in shaky ink. The next week, a journalist came to visit the camp. She read our stories. She read mine. She cried. The week after, my story was published in a local newspaper. For the first time, my pain became power. My silence became a voice. Healing didn't come all at once. There were still nights when I woke up screaming. There were days when I didn't want to move, to breathe, to live. But now, people listened. People read. People saw us not just as victims but as people with names, stories, dreams. NGOs began to support us. They brought textbooks, blankets, even trauma counselors. Slowly, a routine returned. Slowly, we became children again, broken children, yes, but still children. In that brown notebook, I wrote something I never showed anyone, a letter to my mother. I will share it with you now. Dear Mama, I don't know if you saw me run. I don't know if you felt pain when they shot you. I don't know if you knew I was hiding just meters away. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I couldn't scream. I'm sorry I didn't say goodbye. But Mama, I will not let them erase you. I will speak your name. I will tell our story. I will write until the world cannot ignore us. Your daughter. Andover. I know what it's like to carry grief like a backpack, heavy, always there. I know what it's like to smile with cracked lips, to pretend you're fine so your siblings can sleep. But I also know this. Even ashes can grow roses. Even silence can become a song. And even a girl from Guma, Benue State, who watched death come in the night can rise again.